My heels clicked against the polished hardwood of my condo's hallway, a soft, familiar rhythm that usually calmed me after a late afternoon at the firm. Today, though, it sounded like a countdown. The faint citrus scent from the candle I'd lit that morning still lingered, but something else rode the air, an undercurrent of dread I couldn't quite name. I'd left the office early, craving quiet. Instead, as soon as I pushed open my front door, I froze. My parents stood in the middle of my living room, my mother clutching a stack of folded sweaters, my father balancing a cardboard box against his hip. "Mom? Dad?" My voice came out sharper than I intended. What are you doing?" My mother flinched, a guilty child caught red-handed. "Sweetheart, we thought we'd help you pack." "Pack?" I set my bag down slowly, heart thudding. "Pack for what?" My father cleared his throat, eyes sliding toward the bay window as if the skyline might rescue him. "For the move, of course. Into the studio. We didn't want you to worry about the heavy lifting." A studio. The tiny one-bedroom they'd mentioned months ago, barely big enough for a couch and a bed. They'd called it more practical. Heat crawled up my neck. "I never agreed to move. We just assumed," my mother said softly, avoiding my gaze. "This place, it's too much for you to handle." Her words landed like a slap. Too much for me? After everything? I gripped the strap of my bag, nails biting into the leather, and swallowed the surge of hurt. They still didn't know. They still thought I was the girl they'd once dismissed, fragile, directionless. Not anymore. I wasn't always the woman who could stride into a room without flinching. 5 years ago, I was just Lena Walker, 23, still smelling faintly of college dorm laundry detergent and chasing an internship that barely paid for coffee. That night is burned into me like a scar. I'd left work late, the city's winter wind slicing through my cheap wool coat, my ears stinging red. When I finally reached my parents' house, the driveway glowed under the amber porch light. But the glow inside wasn't warm, it pulsed with tension. Mom stood at the foot of the staircase, arms crossed so tightly her knuckles went white. Dad sat at the kitchen island, phone face down, like he'd already made his verdict and didn't need to look at me to enforce it. "You can't keep drifting, Lena," Mom said, her voice brittle. "This internship, it's not a real job. You need something stable. We found you a tiny studio near downtown. You can move in this weekend. It'll give you time to look for something practical." My stomach dropped. Tiny studio? I hadn't even decided to move. Dad's eyes met mine, flat, unwavering. "We've already started packing your things. We're helping you move, whether you're ready or not." I could feel the lump forming in my throat, the sting behind my eyes. I gripped the back of a chair, nails biting the wood. "You're packing my things? Without even asking?" "You need direction," Mom said, her voice softening only slightly, as if that made it less of a betrayal. It wasn't just about the apartment. It was every subtle dismissal, every "maybe you're not cut out for that field," every "be realistic." The life I wanted, the work that set my heart racing, was something they couldn't even picture. My hands trembled as I reached for the delicate silver bracelet my grandmother had given me before she passed. I'd left it on the hall table that morning. Tiny daisies linked by fine silver wire, her last gift and her quiet way of saying, "Bloom where they don't expect you to." I slid it over my wrist, the metal cold against my skin. That single motion steadied me. "I'm not moving into a studio you chose for me," I said finally, my voice steadier than I felt. Mom opened her mouth, but I raised a hand. "I'm moving out, but on my terms. My life, my rules." Their silence was heavier than any argument. That night, I packed my own things my way. When I left that house, the night air felt like a curtain closing behind me, cool, damp, and heavy with the smell of rain on asphalt. I clutched the small leather journal Aunt Margaret had pressed into my palm just hours before, her last whispered words looping in my mind. "Write the life you deserve, Claire. Not the one they've chosen for you." The first weeks in Chicago were a blur of neon signs and the rumble of the L train. I rented a room above a bakery that woke me at dawn with the scent of fresh croissants. Every morning I wrote in that journal before heading to my job as a junior copywriter at a small advertising firm. It was hardly glamorous. Half-broken chairs, coffee that tasted like burnt rubber, but it was mine. I was 22, terrified, and utterly free. The city tested me. Deadlines snapped like whiplash. Colleagues sometimes looked through me as if I were part of the furniture. There were nights when the only dinner I could afford was day-old baguette from the bakery downstairs. But every small victory, an ad campaign that impressed a client, a line of copy my creative director actually underlined, was another brick in the foundation of the life I was building. That director, Monica Bell, became my quiet mentor. A woman in her 50s with silver-streaked curls and an energy that filled the entire floor. She noticed me long before I noticed my own potential. "You've got a voice people lean into here," she said one late evening as we watched the city lights flicker on. "Don't waste it whispering for approval." Her faith was a lifeline. She taught me how to negotiate without apology, how to make my work impossible to ignore. When the agency downsized, she was the one who nudged me toward freelancing. I was terrified, but the memory of my parents' dismissive voices, "It's safer if you just settle," fueled me. Freelancing turned out to be the risk that rewrote my entire future. I built a client list from nothing, pitching local businesses first, then national brands. Each contract meant late nights at my second-hand desk, chipped nail polish tapping against the keyboard as I crafted copy that sang. My savings grew. So did my confidence. I bought a tiny one-bedroom condo overlooking Lake Michigan. Nothing flashy, but the moment I turned the key, I knew it was the first door I'd opened entirely on my own. From its window, I could see the morning light dance across the water, and every sunrise reminded me of Aunt Margaret's journal. I kept it on my desk, its worn leather softening more with each year, the pages filling with ideas and quiet triumphs. I never told my parents. To them, I was simply making ends meet, still their cautious daughter. I let them believe it. It was easier than reopening old wounds. But behind the silence, my life was unfolding into something extraordinary, something they would never see coming. I heard the door click before I saw them. My parents stepped into the loft like visitors in a museum, their footsteps muffled by the plush ivory rug that stretched across the polished oak floor. Mom's eyes darted from the floor-to-ceiling windows to the exposed brick wall with its warm copper glow from the evening sun. Dad stopped just inside the entryway, his hand still on the brass doorknob, as if letting go might mean admitting what he saw was real. I let them take it in. The gallery-style art pieces, one an abstract swirl of indigo and gold, caught the last rays of daylight, and the scent of freshly ground coffee lingered in the air. My leather briefcase rested on the glass console table, the company logo embossed discreetly on the side. Behind it, a framed magazine cover displayed my face beneath the headline, "The Visionary Behind Carter and Vale Design." Mom's lips parted, but no words came. She finally whispered, "This is your place?" I leaned against the kitchen island, a stemless glass of sparkling water in my hand. "Yes. Welcome to my home." Dad finally shut the door with a soft click. He looked older than I remembered. Maybe it was the weight of confusion sitting heavy on his shoulders. "But you said you were barely getting by." I met his gaze steadily. "That's what you chose to believe." The silence stretched, thick and uneasy. Mom's fingers tightened around the strap of her handbag, the same way she used to clutch her pearls when nervous. "We thought you were struggling. We thought we were helping by packing your things." I set the glass down, the quiet chime against marble making them both flinch. "You were helping me move into a tiny studio apartment because you decided I wasn't capable of more. You never asked, you just assumed." Dad cleared his throat. "We only wanted the best for you. We didn't want you to fail." "Fail?" I felt a bitter laugh catch in my chest, but I swallowed it. "You never gave me the chance to succeed in your eyes. The night I left, you told me interior design wasn't a real career. That no one pays bills with pretty fabrics and paint samples. Remember?" His shoulders slumped. I said things in anger. I stepped closer, the click of my heels echoing like a metronome of control. "While you doubted me, I built something from nothing. Carter and Vale is now the top boutique design firm in Boston. We just signed a contract to redesign the new art museum wing. Mom blinked rapidly, as though each word was a stone skipping across a still pond. You own that firm? I founded it, I said evenly. And yes, I own it. Their silence felt like a second sunset, draining the room of its earlier glow. For once, the roles reversed. They were the ones scrambling for footing, and I, steady, unshaken, held the narrative. Mom finally stepped forward, her voice trembling. Why didn't you tell us? I softened, just a fraction. Because you never asked. You told me who I was before I could show you. So, I decided to show the world instead. Dad's jaw tightened, his eyes moist. Emily, he stopped, catching himself. Madison, we misjudged you. I inhaled deeply, the scent of cedar and coffee grounding me. Yes, you did. And now you see who I really am. The city lights flickered alive beyond the windows, tiny galaxies of possibility. In their reflection, I caught their faces, a blend of pride, regret, and something new, respect. For the first time, they looked at me not as the child they thought they were packing away, but as the woman who had already moved far beyond their narrow expectations. I let the silence linger, the soft hum of the air conditioner the only sound in my loft. My parents sat side by side on the cream sofa, their shoulders barely touching, two people suddenly small against the expanse of floor-to-ceiling windows. I folded my arms, leaning against the marble island. So, I began, my voice steady. Now you know where I actually live. Not a tiny studio. Not scraping by. This is my home. Mom swallowed, her fingers worrying the strap of her handbag. Lila, No. I cut her off gently. Let me speak first. The name still felt foreign in their mouths sometimes. Lila Monroe. The name I'd taken back when I refused to be the timid girl they'd tried to pack away like an old sweater. Dad shifted, the same restless tap of his shoe that used to make me flinch as a child. We thought you'd need our help. We didn't mean to decide for me? I tilted my head. To pack up my life without asking? To push me into a box you chose? His jaw tightened, but he didn't answer. I drew a long breath. Here's how this is going to work. If you want to be part of my life, the real one, you'll have to respect some boundaries. Their eyes flicked to each other. First, I said, keeping my tone calm but unyielding, no more backdoor decisions about my future. If you have concerns, you talk to me. Like an equal. I won't be treated like a project you can fix. Mom's eyes glistened. Second, I continued, if you want to visit, you call first. No surprises. I decide when and how you step into my space. Dad exhaled slowly, the fight draining from his shoulders. And finally, I let the pause stretch, feeling the weight of every word. You both need to start living your own dreams again. The ones you shelved while trying to script mine. Remember when you used to paint, Mom? And Dad, the hiking trips you promised yourself? Go back to those. Stop trying to live through me. The room went quiet, the city lights flickering like distant stars beyond the glass. Mom covered her mouth with her hand. I don't even know if I can paint anymore. You can, I said softly. Start with a single stroke, just like I started with a single step the night I walked out. Dad looked down at his hands. I haven't climbed a trail in 10 years. Then start with a small hill behind the old cabin, I suggested. Take a weekend. Breathe again. Their eyes met, hesitant, almost childlike. I love you both, I added, my voice gentler now. But I won't shrink to make you comfortable. If you want to be in my life, it has to be as parents who trust the woman I've become. For the first time in years, Dad nodded, slowly, as though the weight of decades had finally shifted. Mom reached across the couch, slipping her hand into his. We'll try, she whispered. The tightness in my chest eased. This wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. The late afternoon sun poured across my living room in long, honey, gold streaks, lighting the oak floors I'd once scrubbed on my knees when I first moved in. Now they gleamed without effort, a quiet reflection of everything I'd built. I leaned against the wide window ledge, a mug of chamomile tea warming my palms, and watched my parents step through the wrought iron gate toward their car. For the first time in years, their shoulders weren't slumped under the weight of silent judgments. My mother paused to glance back. I caught her faint, uncertain smile, a small, almost shy curve that held something new, respect. My father gave a single nod. No words. None were needed. Inside, the house hummed with a softer energy than it had that morning. The echo of our conversation still lingered, the promises they'd made, to see me as I am now, not the fragile girl they'd tried to box into a tiny studio, the resolve in their voices when they admitted their own fears of losing me. I set the mug down and reached for the silk scarf draped over the arm of the sofa. The scarf had belonged to Aunt Margaret, the woman who'd once whispered, "They'll only know your worth when you know it first." I'd clung to those words when my heart felt like it might shatter. Years ago. The scarf still carried a faint trace of lavender, and as I wrapped it around my neck, a sense of full-circle grace settled over me. The journey here hadn't been about proving anyone wrong, though that was a satisfying byproduct. It had been about proving myself right. Every late night spent learning, every risk I'd taken, every moment of quiet doubt had forged something no one could pack into a box or shrink into a rented room. I caught my reflection in the window. Not the uncertain young woman who once trembled at the sound of a raised voice, but the woman who built a life large enough to hold her own dreams and to invite others to grow. 2. Beyond the glass, the sky was streaked with pink and indigo. I whispered Aunt Margaret's words once more, letting them slip into the fading light like a blessing. "They'll only know your worth when you know it first." And with a slow, steady breath, I smiled, strong, unshaken, and entirely my own.